ITV cancelled it, the fans revolted, and the show came back from the dead. Foyle's War ran for 13 years, more than twice as long as the war it depicted. It survived cancellation not once but twice, and Radio Times readers voted it the most missed British drama of the entire 21st century. But here's what most fans never knew. The writer was married to the producer. An entire year of the war was lost forever when ITV pulled the plug too soon. And the fans who saved the show did it with something nobody uses anymore, a letter. Stay with us, because this is the real story of Foyle's War. Fact 1. It was created to replace Inspector Morse. Foyle's War did not arrive on ITV by accident. It arrived by necessity. When Inspector Morse ended in 2000 with the death of John Thor's character, ITV found itself without its flagship Sunday night detective drama. The network needed a replacement, and fast. Approximately 300 ideas were submitted in response to the brief. They were gradually reduced to 3 finalists. Anthony Horowitz's concept of a wartime detective in a coastal English town was one of them. It won, and the show that would eventually be voted the most missed British drama of the 21st century by Radio Times readers was commissioned as a direct consequence of the hole left by Morse's death. Fact 2. The writer was married to the producer. Anthony Horowitz created Foyle's War, wrote the majority of its scripts, and spent 15 years developing the series. The executive producer throughout that entire run was Jill Green. Jill Green is Horowitz's wife. They have been married for decades. The creative partnership that produced one of the most meticulously researched and carefully written detective dramas in British television history was, at its core, a husband and wife working together on a shared passion project. Horowitz has acknowledged that this combination, professional and personal, was both the show's greatest strength and occasionally its greatest source of pressure. He has described the show as lasting 3 times longer than the war itself. His wife was in the room for every single decision. Fact 3. ITV cancelled it after 7 series. In 2007, ITV cancelled Foyle's War. The decision came from a new management team that had decided the show was growing tired and that ITV needed to modernize to attract younger viewers and satisfy advertisers. The cancellation came despite the fact that the show had been BAFTA nominated as Best Drama Series in 2004 and continued to draw significant audiences. The timing was particularly painful. Anthony Horowitz had only reached 1944 in the show's wartime timeline, meaning that nearly an entire year of the war and everything that happened in it would simply never be depicted. He was, in his own words, mildly surprised. He was also considerably more than mildly disappointed. Fact 4. Fans wrote furious letters, and one here is the fact that most television histories overlook entirely. When Foyle's War was cancelled, the audience did not accept it quietly. Viewers wrote furious letters to newspapers. They complained directly to ITV. They organized. And they made enough noise that the cancellation became a significant public relations problem for the network. The 7th series, which had been intended as the final series, attracted 7.6 million viewers when it aired in 2010. A new management team, headed by ITV's director of television Peter Fincham, was by then in place. The viewing figures and the fan pressure together made the decision straightforward. The show was recommissioned. A letter-writing campaign by devoted viewers had reversed an executive decision at one of Britain's biggest commercial broadcasters. It remains one of the most remarkable examples of audience power in British television history. Fact 5. An entire year of the war was lost forever. The cancellation of 2007 had a consequence that could never be fully repaired. When ITV cancelled the show mid-run, Anthony Horowitz was forced to discard scripts that had already been written for episodes set during 1943 and 1944. Those scripts, covering events and stories from one of the most dramatic years of the entire war, were simply abandoned. When the show returned in 2010, it jumped forward in time, creating gaps of 9 months to a year between episodes. Previous series had never had gaps of more than a month. The stories that Horowitz had planned to tell about 1943 and 1944 were never told. He has said, as recently as 2019, that there is still that missing year to cover, and that he would be open to a Christmas special to finally address it. Fact 6. It was cancelled a second time. When Foyle's War finally ended in January 2015, it was not because the audience had stopped watching. It was because Anthony Horowitz had run out of war. The show had followed Christopher Foyle from 1940 all the way through to 1947, covering the entire Second World War and then moving into the Cold War era. By the time the final episode aired, Horowitz felt he had covered every significant area of the period. There were, in his view, No more true stories left to tell from that specific era. The show ended not with a cancellation, but with a creative conclusion, which, for a series that had survived one forced cancellation and returned triumphantly, was exactly the ending it deserved. Subscribe if you want more. There's plenty more where this came from. Fact 7. The first reviews were mostly negative. Here is the fact that surprises people most about a show now regarded as a British classic. When Foyle's War first aired in October 2002, the critical reception was lukewarm at best. Most early reviews were cautious or outright negative. Critics questioned whether wartime Hastings could sustain audience interest, whether the period detail would feel authentic rather than theatrical, and whether Michael Kitchen's deliberately understated performance would connect with viewers. The audience disagreed. From the very first series, viewers responded warmly and in growing numbers. It took the critical establishment considerably longer to catch up with what the public had already decided. Fact 8. Michael Kitchen barely spoke in interviews. The lead actor of Foyle's War, Michael Kitchen, was almost as famously private as the character he played. He gave very few interviews during the show's 13-year run, and those he did give were notably brief. This was entirely consistent with his approach to the role itself. Kitchen's Foyle speaks as little as possible, watches constantly, and conveys more with a single unblinking look than most actors manage with pages of dialogue. Honeysuckle Weeks, who played his driver, Sam Stewart, has described him as sheer class, a performer whose restraint on screen was matched by his discretion of it. Fact 9. The show featured an extraordinary guest cast. Over 13 years, Foyle's War attracted some of the finest actors in British and international television as guest stars. The list includes David Tennant, Peter Capaldi, Emily Blunt, Rosamund Pike, Danny Dyer, Andrew Scott, and Charles Dance. All of them appeared in individual episodes, drawn partly by the quality of Horowitz's writing and partly by the prestige of a show that took its historical research as seriously as its dramatic storytelling. Foyle's War, like Midsomer Murders and Poirot before it, quietly became one of the most reliable launching pads for British acting careers, a mark of quality that ambitious performers actively sought out. Fact 10. Anthony Horowitz also created Midsomer Murders and wrote Poirot. Anthony Horowitz is one of the most prolific and successful writers in British television history. His credits include episodes of Poirot, Robin of Sherwood, and the creation of Midsomer Murders. He also created Foyle's War. He wrote James Bond continuation novels authorized by the Ian Fleming estate. And he wrote new Sherlock Holmes novels authorized by the Arthur Conan Doyle estate. One man was responsible for creating both Midsomer Murders and Foyle's War, two of the most successful British detective dramas of the past 30 years. He did both while simultaneously writing best-selling crime novels. His working life makes most people's careers look leisurely by comparison. Fact 11. Radio Times readers voted it the most missed show of the century in a Radio Times poll asking viewers which show from the 21st century they would most like to see return. Foyle's War came first, above Spooks, above Downton Abbey, above Life on Mars, above Happy Valley. The show that ITV had cancelled as growing tired in 2007 was, according to the readership of Britain's most established television magazine, the program they missed more than any other made in the past 25 years. Horowitz was told about the result and described it as genuinely cheering. He noted that it reminded him of the letter-writing campaign that had brought the show back the first time, and suggested that a Christmas special remained a possibility. Fact 12. It is now on Netflix. Foyle's War, which ended in 2015 and was never available on the major streaming platforms for years afterwards, recently found a new home on Netflix UK and Ireland. All 28 episodes, covering the wartime years from 1940 through to the Cold War of 1947, became available on the platform from October 2025. A show that had been difficult to find for years suddenly became available to an entirely new generation of viewers who had never encountered Christopher Foyle before. The show that ITV tried to cancel, that fans fought to save, and that ended exactly as its creator intended, is now introducing itself to people who weren't born when it first aired. The detective who refused to leave his post in 1940 is still on duty. Fact 13. The historical research was extraordinary. Every episode of Foyle's War was built around a real historical event or issue from the Second World War. Anthony Horowitz and his research team spent months before each series identifying authentic stories from the home front that could form the basis of fictional murders. The subjects covered across 8 series included the treatment of conscientious objectors, black market profiteering, the internment of enemy aliens, American racism imported with U.S. troops, the secret torture of German and Russian spies in a North London psychiatric facility, and the betrayal of 1,200 Russian prisoners who were sent back to Stalin and certain death at the end of the war. These were not invented for dramatic effect. Every one of them happened. Horowitz has said that his primary goal was always to find the truth of the period and let the fiction grow around it. Fact 14. The show outlasted the real war by 13 years. The Second World War lasted 6 years. Foyle's War lasted 13, more than twice as long as the conflict it depicted. By the time the final episode aired in January 2015, the show had spent 8 series moving through history at a pace that Horowitz controlled precisely. Each episode was set in a specific month and year, advancing the timeline of the war with meticulous care. The detective who had been denied a transfer to active service in 1940 had, by 2015, outlasted the war, outlasted ITV's attempts to cancel him, outlasted the critics who had doubted him, and outlasted the expectations of everyone who had underestimated him from the very beginning. Fact 15. It was the show that proved TV audiences were smarter than executives. When ITV cancelled Foyle's War in 2007, the network's reasoning was clear. The show was growing tired. It needed to modernize. Younger viewers and advertisers demanded something different. The audience proved every part of that argument wrong. They wrote letters, they organized, they watched the returning series in numbers that embarrassed the executives who had cancelled it. They voted it the most missed show of the 21st century. And when it arrived on Netflix in 2025, a new generation discovered that a quietly spoken detective in a wartime coastal town was considerably more compelling than anyone in a boardroom had predicted. ITV tried to kill Foyle's War twice. The audience refused to let it die, and the show and the audience were right. And those are 15 shocking facts about one of the most underrated, most resilient, and most quietly brilliant detective dramas in British television history. A show that survived cancellation, won a letter-writing war, and is still finding new audiences 30 years after it was first conceived. If you are a true Foyle's War fan, this channel was made for you. Subscribe, and we will see you next time.